But the idea of restoring manufacturing to the glory days of the 1950s and the 1960s is quite misplaced. That's not going to happen regardless of any kind of tariff policy. My name is Terrence Guay, T-E-R-R-E-N-C-E. Last name is spelled G-U-A-Y. I am the Director for the Center for Global Business Studies within the Smeal College of Business. Tariffs are a form of tax on imported goods. So when governments impose tariffs, they are trying to encourage companies and individuals within their own country to buy domestic-made goods rather than goods from abroad. Economics textbooks tell us that tariffs don't usually work, certainly not for the long term. Over the long term, tariffs generally do not work. They become very expensive for consumers and companies that import goods. Local companies now have a cushion. They can charge more for their goods and maybe not do the necessary restructuring and consolidation that is necessary to become a more competitive company. So in general, tariffs usually do not work to achieve the goals that governments are putting in place for them. Tariffs are seen as a very easy solution. They sound very good as a solution to problems. Governments may claim that they are collecting revenues on tariffs and that may be helping provide more money for the government, but that is sort of a false thinking. The rationale we're often seeing for tariffs in the current environment is to provide more manufacturing jobs in the United States. But there's a couple of problems with that idea as well. It could take a very long time for that to happen. Companies have developed supply chains all over the world, particularly in places like Asia, and to uproot all of those suppliers and companies that are a part of the production process is very expensive and time-consuming. So companies need some certainty to know that tariffs will be in place, not just for one administration, but for successive administrations. And when tariffs are changing and going up and down and being delayed and rescinded, companies just can't invest millions of dollars to build new factories in the United States. If Americans were really concerned about manufacturing in the United States, they would have been demanding over the last few decades that the products that they buy be American-made. But American consumers are generally driven by price, and that has put pressure on companies to go international to find ways to produce their products. And countries around the world, from China to Vietnam and elsewhere, have worked with these companies to build manufacturing in those countries. So if the goal is to try to rebuild manufacturing in the United States, there are ways to do that besides tariffs, because tariffs are going to be a very expensive and very time-consuming way to try to accomplish that. And it may not even persuade a lot of companies to make these changes, given the cost of relocating supply chains. So one way of doing that might be to help retrain American workers for manufacturing jobs. That would allow them to take on jobs in certain industries. If we think about where we would like Americans to be doing more manufacturing, we probably don't want that for low-scale products like shoes or garden supplies. Where we might want to see that is in goods that may have an impact on national security, things like pharmaceutical products. Tariffs can be used in ways that might be more selective. If the United States is mostly concerned about a handful of countries, and we can just name China as being one of them, that may not be competing, in our view, fairly in the way that the government plays a much more active role in the economy, it would be a much better idea, in my opinion, to get like-minded countries to support us, to work on a common policy towards China, rather than to lash out on every country, accusing them of competing unfairly. What this also has created is animosity in other countries. Europeans are boycotting American goods. Canadians have dropped by about 30% the number of visits from Canada to the United States just in the month of March, and are threatening to delay or forego visiting the United States for many months ahead. So what this is going to do is create tensions between consumers in other countries who feel that they have been unfairly singled out by the United States government in ways that they felt that they were partners. And even if this can be patched up in some way, I think the damage has been done, and a lot of consumers around the world may indeed boycott American companies who had nothing to do with the tariff decisions in the first place.